defensive back, TCU.
And welcome into Purple Daily. That, of course, was the pick Roger Goodell announcing back in April of Jeff Gladney, the Vikings quarterback. Joining us now, Lance Zierlein, an NFL Network analyst, and you can follow him on Twitter at Lance Zierlein. That's Zierlein. Lance, let's start with Gladney, who you are predicting will be a dark horse to be the National Football League Rookie of the Year, which is pretty impressive, stepping in and playing corner in Zimmer's defense. Your thoughts on what Gladney can bring, I would guess from day one, basically having had as little time in training camp and off-season camps as one can possibly have because of the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's going to be tough for for a lot of these rookies. It's going to be very tough for cornerbacks because they're going to take such a big step up. I mean, Gladney from the Big 12 up to the NFL. I mean, that's a huge step. We know, as we all know, Minnesota has some openings for the job. So that's, to be a defensive player of the Rookie of the Year, you got to make plays. To make plays, you got to have opportunities. And I think Jeff Gladney is going to have opportunities. I think the thing that really separates him in terms of giving him a chance to win defensive Rookie of the Year is that he has the ability to he has the instincts and the quick twitch to recognize play opportunities and then pounce on play opportunities. And you look at his passes defense over the course of his career at TCU, it bears that out. He's a guy who will sit down on certain routes, and that's going to look, he's going to get burned from time to time because he does have a more aggressive mindset. But to win a Defensive Rookie of the Year award, you need to stack some stats. And there's a reason that linebackers have been winning it quite a bit. But cornerbacks can win this award too. And when you have a guy who does have his ability to get his hand on the ball as often as Jeff Gladney did in college, even though the interception numbers need to come up a little bit, that's one of the reasons I kind of like him. I think the opportunity will be there. I think that the skill set is there. And I really think the mental toughness is there. And that's another big part of it.
What is your assessment or prediction for a guy like Gladney and key players in this draft class who might step in as far as time that this is going to take as well, just to adjust? Because, no OTAs, no camps. Training camp now is going to be as different and shortened as we've probably seen it in our lifetimes. And just as far as that step in coming in and facing, top QBs, receivers, go down that path, what's your guess about how long it's going to take even the top players to adjust to the step from the college game to the pro game?
I think some of it is going to be based upon, I think it's natural to assume a lot of it's going to be based upon your level of competition in college. If you've seen a certain level of competition across from you, that certainly plays into it. Remember, Jeff Gladney has played against Oklahoma, so he's seen Baker Mayfield, he's seen Kyler Murray, he's seen CD Lamb. He's seen Hollywood Brown. He's seen these guys who have speed. He's seen big guys like Denzel Mims, who I thought he was fantastic against last year. That's another rookie, but still, to the point that he has seen some NFL caliber wide receivers and quarterbacks just in Oklahoma alone. Now, is that going to get him ready? Maybe not get him ready, but it's going to be a matter of how much has he been ready. If Jeff Gladney, like any rookie, I know your question's about rookies in general, but if those rookies have been working at their craft, if they've been studying playbooks so that they can react rather than think, because that's a big part of it. The guys who have to think are the ones who get in trouble. The guys who can react don't get in trouble as often. And most rookies have to think. That's just the way it goes. But once they get to the phase of reaction, and look, a lot of that comes with just experience. There's no way to shortcut experience. But the more time that you put into the offseason on, maybe throwing sessions, one-on-one sessions against wide receivers, if he's been able to do that, or if rookies have been able to do that, their ability to not only go through the reps, but really get through the playbook so that they're comfortable with where they are and what their responsibilities are, so they can get to the reaction instead of the think. I think that's going to be the key. Those players who've been able to do that. Certain positions, I think cornerback is a reaction-based position, an instinct-based position. I think linebacker is to an extent, but there's a lot of things that linebackers have to key on that they didn't have to in the pros. So I think the position differences will be a problem for certain positions. It's going to take longer. I think quarterbacks, there's really no way that you can look at it any differently. Quarterbacks are going to struggle this year. I predict. And there's not a ton of them who should step into starting roles, but they're going to struggle because there's no way that you can simulate an NFL season just on the playbook. You got to get reps.
Yeah.
You got to get reps in.
What do you think about like Burrow and a kid like that? Because I think ordinarily, if he had played through or been through OTAs and camps, he would probably start on day one, and he'd struggle, and it might be tough, but they would probably throw him in there. Do you think that across the board, it would probably be a mistake in 2020 with the way things have gone to have a young QB start or drafted QB start?
I don't like to just generalize. I think every situation, we could say in a general sense, it's every team's preference for a young quarterback to have a redshirt year, learn. I think every team would love to do that. The reality is that certain quarterbacks, if you throw them in too early, it could have a profound impact on their confidence level. And that's something that could have an impact on their overall success down the road. I think we saw David Carr in Houston have some of those issues over time because he wasn't protected properly. It manifested itself into other phases of his game. I think with Joe Burrow has the advantage of, A, he's a very cerebral quarterback, but B, he really gets the ball out quickly, and he has a level of athletic ability to escape pressure, elude pressure, not just with quickness out of the pocket, which is okay for him, right, but the ability to slide around the pocket and take himself out of harm's way. And so I think Joe Burrow is kind of uniquely positioned now, once again, I'm basing this all on 19 because this isn't who I saw in 2018, but based specifically on 2019, I saw the pocket presence, I saw the ability to get rid of the ball quickly, and I saw an intelligence level where I think that his stepping into a situation with A.J. Green, and you've got tight ends, you've got multiple wide receivers, Tyler Boyd as well, and some running backs who can catch the ball out of the backfield. I actually think that Joe Burrow is actually in a pretty decent spot offensively to have some early success.
Interesting. Vikings, 15 picks, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, set a record. Lance, your thoughts on the realistic possibility of how many of those picks do you think can help in some way, shape, or form in 2020?
Read down. Let's go through why don't you read me the list of, because I don't have them right in front of me. Let's just say the top 4 rounds, and I'll tell you.
Of course. Let's see here. Jefferson, Gladney, Ezra Cleveland, who I think is probably going to play either tackle or guard to start the season, Cameron Dantzler. Let's start with those 4, or let's go with those 4.
So I think Justin Jefferson steps in right away. As you guys also saw, I'm sure Justin Jefferson, I think, was 7th on my list for Rookie of the Year, potentially on the offensive side of the ball. I'm not going to say, what's going to be interesting is you got B.C. Johnson. If BC is going to line up in the slot, Justin Jefferson was better in the slot as a sophomore or last year, I should say, than on the outside. And I think he's more comfortable in the slot. So I think that is the interesting one to me is, are you going to put him somewhere where he's comfortable or where it makes the most sense with a guy you already have in there in BC? But I think Justin Jefferson, there's no reason he doesn't, with his ball skills and his confidence level, I think he steps right into a prominent role. I think Cam Dantzler, people sleep on Cam Dantzler, and I took some heat for Cam Dantzler, but I know what I saw on tape. And to me, with Jeff Gladney and Cam Dantzler, to me, you have the makings of what the Vikings, were trying to build with Xavier and with Trey, is you hope that you had 2 corners that you could really rely on for the long term. And Minnesota did for some time. I think this is going to be the next cast of characters who are going to come in and make a difference. Cam Dantzler needs to get bigger, but he's another guy with tremendous confidence and ball skills. I mean, those are 2 of the more, Cam Dantzler is not as tough in run support as Jeff Gladney is, but I really loved what I saw from Cam Dantzler against Jamar Chase, who is like the top wide receiver in college football right now at LSU. And then what he did against Alabama, he gave up 3 catches over those 2 games against Alabama and LSU. That's unbelievable to me. And the way he handled himself, I was very pleased with. All 3 of those guys, to me, I think could become factors early on. Ezra Cleveland, I'm kind of pumping the brakes a little bit. I think Ezra's got to get stronger. Last year, he had a toe issue that really short-circuited his entire season. He wasn't able to practice for most of the year. So I think Ezra still needs to get bigger, needs to get stronger, and stepping up against the grown man strength of the NFL versus where he played. I think that might be a little steeper climb than maybe some are ready for. So I think he may be a year away.
Do you think the right move there with him too is to plug him in at tackle there behind Reef and allow him to develop it? Because there's been talk about possibly shifting him inside to left guard and then Reef plays tackle. But from what you're saying, it sounds like the smart play might be to just develop him solely at tackle and hope that he can replace Reef in 2021.
I think this is so. I actually, because it's Gary Kubiak specifically, Gary understands the athleticism of an Ezra Cleveland, and just because it's specifically this brand of outside zone, rushing attack, Cleveland. Most teams I wouldn't plug him in at guard. I think with a Gary Kubiak offense, when you're asking a guy to be a move guard, I think he can fit in with Gary Kubiak's offense. The problem's going to be, I think, straight ahead, being able to play with power. But this happens with a lot of zone scheme guards. But being able to play with power is going to be an issue when he gets up against certain physical players. But because it's outside zone scheme, you're on the move so much that kind of takes away that, phone booth battle that he would probably lose against NFL power. I think the real advantage he also has is because he has offensive tackle experience. That's a big advantage for him, pass protection at guard. We saw that in Houston with Max Sharping from Northern Illinois, who I thought had some similar characteristics to Ezra Cleveland. The Texans moved him in from left tackle into the guard position, and he's a starting guard now. Cleveland has a chance to do that with Minnesota, but I think long-term, the value is always going to be tackle. If you can get them out to tackle, Larry Tunsil was a tackle who went to guard because he needed to, but tackle's where the value is. However, because it's Gary Kubiak's zone scheme, I truly believe that he can play at guard for now, but I don't think that's his long-term position.
Beyond QB, what do you think are the positions where coaching staffs and fans, I guess as well, are going to have to be the most patient here because of the lack of time to prepare? What positions do you think you're literally going to have to say, if we had May, June, July, etc. to work, it would be fine. But now, at least expectation-wise for 2020, we probably have to dial things back to be fair to the kid. And especially, my point is not potentially, wipe out his confidence in year one, which could be a problem.
Well, so I have two answers for that. I would say cornerback. We talked a little bit about that. I think cornerback is one area that you could look at that. But the other one's really going to be a position group, and that's offensive line, because offensive line is all about continuity. It's all about reps. And so teams who don't have the same starting five in there, teams who have two or more new starters, I think that's where you're going to have to really have some patience. I don't care who those starters are. Understanding and knowing not only the offense, but the guy next to you, what his tendencies are, what his strengths are, what his weaknesses are.
Sure.
That's a big part of the offensive line. And then working as a unit. For certain teams, that's a really big deal based upon scheme. So I think offensive line, that inability to have the OTAs, that inability to get the work in next to each other and with each other as a group and a unit, that's something that is there's no way that you can simulate that. You've just got to be out there getting it in. And because they didn't, I think offensive lines, especially ones, like I said, with two or more starters, that's going to be the big problem. And obviously rookie starters, that's then a twofold issue. Integrating a rookie in, and then the rookie's own issues trying to become an NFL player.
And coaches, traditionally probably aren't patient as possible, but here I think it's definitely going to change. Last thing, your thoughts on the 2020 Vikings, just as far as your expectations with, the roster, obviously having some significant changes, especially on defense, as we talked about at cornerback. What do you think about this team going into 2020 right now, if we play a normal season?
Yeah, so I always look at you first start off with what you're doing in the division. So you look at the division opponents. You got some wide receivers and a quarterback who can make some noise over in Detroit, even though they haven't, really been a factor in the division. And that directly lines up with your perceived weakness, which is going to be the cornerback position and the ability to cover over the long haul over the course of the game. The Green Bay Packers don't really have the weapons that we know. They got Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron can make chicken salad with chicken, but the problem is there's a lot of issues there with between he and the organization. You just drafted his future replacement, and then you didn't give him a premier wide receiver in the first 2 rounds. And that was something that was a big weakness. So I'm really curious to see how that team unfolds and what the chemistry is like between head coach and quarterback. So, from that standpoint, I wouldn't be quite as worried as usual, except for the fact it's Aaron Rodgers. And then lastly, the Bears. I actually think the Bears are kind of a dark horse dangerous team this year in the NFC in general. I like what they have on defense, and I like their ability to challenge what Minnesota does offensively. But we both know that Thielen getting back to 100%, we didn't see 100% Thielen at all last year. So when Adam Thielen gets back to where he is, that's a very special connection that he has with the quarterback. And then, you've got a rock solid tight end. You've got a running back who is the best outside zone running back in the league. You've got depth at the position. You got an offensive line that does have some continuity. And then maybe most importantly, you're adding a wide receiver to help take over for a departed Stephon Diggs, who wasn't always happy. I mean, wasn't always a happy guy in the locker room. And I think there's something to be said about, just a quarterback being comfortable with getting the ball to his wide receivers without some type of reprisal through social media. And I do want to mention also BC Johnson. I was a big fan of his coming out of Colorado State. I've really been happy with the way he's developed. I think this is a great offense for him. But with the Vikings, I think they're once again, you're looking at probably, in my estimation, wild card type of team. But that's all going to depend on how quickly the new DBs, how early they integrate into the team, and then what type of pressure Minnesota can generate up front, because that's going to be a huge part of it.
Do you pay Cook?
What's that?
I said, would you pay Dalvin Cook?
So I talked to our running back coach in the offseason, and here's what he said. I would pay running backs after 3 years, get them their make them happy, get them their longer term deals, and then they play for 4 more years, and then you're out by the 5th year of the deal. And then you've had what amounts to 7 years of a running back, which is their prime, and you're good to go. With first round running backs, it gets pushed back even further, and then that second contract is a real killer. What Cook is asking for, look, I don't believe, and remember now, I studied running game under the Gary Kubiak regime and Alex Gibbs and all this here in Houston, so I'm very well aware of outside zone scheme stuff. My dad's a former NFL line coach. I think special running backs are special running backs. I think Dalvin Cook is an excellent running back. Here's my problems with paying Dalvin Cook. Injury history dating all the way back to college. There's just no way around it. He's not staying on the field full 16. That's just not something that we're used to seeing dating back to his last couple seasons in college, multiple surgeries. And then on top of that, this is an offense, frankly, where a great running back can be an elite running back, but a good running back can be a very good running back because of the scheme. If it's run properly and you got a quarterback who does his job in terms of the play action game and throwing with accuracy. And I've seen it before with Arian Foster here. He was great with Gary Kubiak as an undrafted free agent. Then he got his big paycheck and an injury set in. And he is a guy who had injury history back to college as well. So I think, from an analytics standpoint and from a value standpoint, when you look at the history of the league, it's probably not smart to pay Dalvin Cook as much as he wants. From a keeping the window open for the Minnesota Vikings with Kirk Cousins and what's in place here, if you feel like you still have enough defensively, maybe you consider something like that with a shorter term deal.
Lance, thanks much. Great stuff. Much appreciated. Yeah. Okay, take care.